in a holding pattern for a minute or two.
Okay. Hopefully this works. And when it's, sometimes bad, when it is time for me to chime in to vote or what, early. All right.
Everything should be good to go.
Okay, I call the meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Okay. Commissioner Tidmore.
Here.
Commissioner Boyer. Here. Commissioner Devane. Here. Commissioner Flores is absent. Commissioner Young.
Here.
That's it.
Don't we have a,
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Berry has to be excused.
right. Okay, so we've got a copy of, a draft copy of the minutes from August 21st. Does anyone have any comments, suggestions, additions, modifications? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes of 8/21/23.
We have a motion. Second.
Yes.
Second.
Oh, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
I,
Oh,
I
no.
had trouble with mine too.
That's an aye from Commissioner Young.
yes.
Okay. Do we want to move on to the hearing or start with some other stuff, Fred?
What's that?
I said, do you want to just move on to the hearing so we don't have our applicants sitting around waiting while we talk about stuff?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move right into the hearing. I now open the public hearing on application for certificate of appropriateness, file number CA-2023-05. My name is Kurt Tidmore. I am the chairperson for this hearing. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with the Independence Development Code and state law, ORS 197.763. Specifically, the staff will present the staff report and recommendation. The applicant will then have an opportunity to present the proposal and address any issues raised by the staff report and recommendation. For public testimony, I will first ask to hear from people who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. I will then ask to hear from people who have neutral comments or questions about the proposal, neither for nor against. Finally, those in opposition to the proposal will have an opportunity to present testimony. City staff may then present additional material and recommendations based on public testimony. The applicant will be given the opportunity to have the last word. After each presentation, I will ask for questions from the commission. If you intend to present oral testimony, please fill out a request to speak form located at the city recorder station. We are recording this hearing, so please also clearly state your name, city of residence when you are called to speak. This will help in preparing accurate written minutes of the hearing and also assist with mailing copies of the decision to all interested parties. If you have written testimony or other evidence to submit, please give it to the staff so they can be entered into the record. The commission is required to disclose any conflicts of interest and ex parte contacts that we have with the proposal or applicant. That is, whether we have any financial or other personal interest in the proposal and whether we have spoken with anybody about the proposal outside of this hearing. Also, commissioners may only participate if they can do so without undue bias either for or against the application. Do any commissioners wish to make disclosures?
No.
No.
Are there any challenges?
No.
Are there any challenges from the audience as to conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, or bias related to any member of the commission? State law requires me to tell you a number of things at the beginning of the hearing. First, the applicable substantive criteria that apply to this application are contained in the written staff report and will be identified and discussed in the oral staff report. Second, your testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or development code that you believe apply to this application, ORS 197.763, paragraph 5, subparagraph B. Third, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or other people an opportunity to respond may preclude an appeal of the decision of this application based on that issue. Again, that's ORS 197.763, 5-C. Finally, to the applicant, failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court, ORS 197.796, paragraph 3, subparagraph B. We will now hear the staff report.
Perfect. Good. Hi there. My name is Fred Evander. I'm the city planner for the City of Independence. And I'm here to present this staff report today for a proposal to replace 2 non-historic windows and the siding at 357 8th Street. You'll note that the staff report includes that there's the possibility that some trim would be replaced too as part of this project. So we will get to that just in a little bit. This application was submitted by Beverly West and Andrew Tanner. They've requested the approval of this application for certificate of appropriateness. I have included an existing description of the existing building in the staff report and sort of getting to the project itself. I should have grabbed the mouse. Let me grab the mouse. I keep on thinking, or the pointer. We got the pointer. We got a complaint from someone that said when you use the laser pointer, people online can't see it. And so I keep on thinking, oh, it'd be a great idea to actually have a pointer that could point to the screen. But right now we're still with this. So Karen, could you please go to page, I think it's 20, the attachment 25. I think it is, where we start seeing some pictures. So the project seeks essentially 2 changes to the buildings. The first, and the relatively simple change, is change to the non-historic windows that are in the gables of the building. Right here, you can't see the gable in this picture, but there's 2 aluminum horizontal sliders on the building. If you go to the next picture, Karen, I can sort of point out where those are. So just scroll up just a hair if you could, or maybe zoom out of that picture just a little bit, Karen. Perfect. So the first horizontal slider, aluminum slider, is up in this gable here. And then if you scroll down to the next picture, you can see the second one in the gable right.
Oh, yeah.
Right here.
I don't see the first one.
I don't
Right,
either.
you can't see it from that angle, but you could see it like on Google Maps. It's
Okay,
relative.
so it's on
We'll take your
the
word for it.
right-hand side of the peak?
Right, and
Yeah.
neither of them are historic to the building. They've clearly been added on. They're both aluminum horizontal sliders. And so
It's right
making,
in there, in
and what's
between them.
proposed to be changed or
The other
added
one looks-
instead to those areas would be a single pane casement window. In both instances, that is, would be a step in the right direction for the building, because those horizontal aluminum sliders are not historic to the building. Going back up, if you could scroll up, yeah, that one's fine, Karen. The other change, and I mean, you can, if you go to page 22 real quick, that shows the horizontal sliders real good. So you can see those two buildings right there, or those two windows right there. So the second part is where the application gets a little more complicated, because the siding is a horizontal lap siding on the building. When you go up one more picture, Karen, you can see that that siding is extended underneath the window trim and underneath the corner board trim right here. It also has features like the knee braces on the siding. And so in the removal of any sort of siding from the house, it's going to have relatively drastic impacts on the things that are above the siding. To get to that siding, you would need to remove other things. Also, the way that people install new siding is typically like when you see it on newer buildings, this trim right here is overlaid on top of that siding. In most new buildings, you see the trim butted up and at the same plane as the siding. And so some of this depth that you see right here,
And up on the top
it
of the
would be,
windows and everything.
would be
Gone.
somewhat, it would be difficult for a contractor to recreate. That, and when we look at our historic preservation standards, and really the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation, what they encourage is they encourage retention of wooden features where possible. And we will get to that in just a little bit. Part of the reason that that this is requested is to remove the lead paint that exists on the exterior of the building and to easily remove caulking that is failing along the side of the sides of the house. The applicant believes that in repainting that in the future, some of that caulking will make the building need to be repainted more frequently than just replacing the entire siding and then repainting. So that's the general scope of the project. Going through some of the criteria for approval, you essentially have two criteria to evaluate. A, the proposed alteration or addition will cause the resource to mow. I'm on page 8 of this packet. The proposed alteration or addition will cause the resource to more closely approximate the historical character, appearance, or material composition of the original structure than the existing structure, or the proposed alteration or addition is compatible with the historic characteristics of the area and with the existing structure in massing, size, scale, materials, and architectural features. My response is that the proposed window changes meets this standard, but at this point, the siding proposal as proposed does not. The criteria, the guidelines that I use to evaluate that decision are found in the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. They're copied and pasted into our code. You'll remember a few months ago, we went through those standards and just a simple little presentation of what's supposed to be evaluated. I'll just go through those quick. The first one is, relates to the purpose of the building. The purpose of the building is still going to be maintained. It's a single-family home. It's going to be maintained as a single-family home. The second is the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic material or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. And in this case, the application as proposed does not meet this standard. The historic character is intended to be retained and preserved. It discourages things like the removal of or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a building. In this case, things like the corner boards, the knee braces, the window trim depth, even the lap siding itself, all of those things contribute to the character of the existing historic character of the building. Removing that and installing a lap siding would be different. Also, the siding that's proposed at present has a beveled edge. The existing siding lays flat. It has a little groove at the top. Some of those details would be lost as part of this project. Also, the applicant acknowledges that some of the features that are removed might be damaged, and so you would have to essentially remake the features and put them on. Also, things like with the depth that I noted around the windows, it would just be difficult to recreate. It would take a craftsman to recreate the character of the building. What I will note is on page 10, I cut and paste some of those criteria just straight from the Secretary of Interior guidelines. You can see what's recommended and what's not recommended. Things like removing or substantially changing wood features, which are important in defining the overall historic character of the building, so that as a result, the character is diminished. That's discouraged. Or removing a major portion of the historic wood from a facade, that's also discouraged. And as proposed, this application would do some of those things. You'll remember some of the Secretary of Interior guidelines, they're generally set up in like a mitigation sequencing sort of approach, where it's first you protect and maintain, then you repair, and if necessary, you replace. And evidence that protecting and maintaining was considered has not been
Provided. Right.
That being said, I will note that we did visit the site. The western wall of that house in particular is quite is in the worst shape of any of the walls that we noted out there. Yes.
Which picture is that?
I'll have Karen flip to it. It's page 31, Karen. 31 and
It's this one.
32.
This one?
So you can see that this wall is in rougher shape than the rest. Partially, it's due to the fact that this is the weather side of the house.
Yeah.
But also partially, you can tell a bathroom window was right here, and it was replaced with
Siding.
siding that you can tell that there's a gap here, and also there's like a plastic piece, a temporary patch that has,
And the siding doesn't line up in half the,
it doesn't line up or anything like that. And so that being said, replacing siding on this wall does absolutely seem appropriate to staff. And partially that's because this is a non-street facing wall. You will note that when you go back to page 10 in those criteria, it says
It's not, yeah.
what is not recommended is replacing a deteriorated wood feature or wood siding on a primary or other highly visible elevation with a new matching wood feature. This is not, and that's the last one in the second box, Karen. You found it, you're right there. And you'll see that this is not a highly visible elevation or a primary elevation of the building. We could also see some evidence that there was potentially something going on in the southern gable of the house. You can see some of that on page 29 of the application. You can see that there's some issues roughly in this general area that might be associated potentially with flashing in this area, potentially making a change in that location makes sense as well. But I mean, this side of the building is a newer addition. You can tell that, and the applicant said it was a porch that was enclosed. We could see that there was not an enclosed porch?
No, just that one side.
Just the one side? Oh, this side.
Just the living area.
Okay. It's definitely a newer portion of the building, and you can tell it's a newer portion of the building because
Well, it's got those windows too.
you can tell it's a newer portion. Well, no, this part right here. This is an addition. Can you,
Right.
Karen, can you flip to page 30, please? This, you can see this to the left of this is the historic house. Tell this was the original portion of the house. This portion was an addition. And the siding here is a wider reveal than you have on the rest of the house. So if you flip then to page 27, Karen, this is the east side of the house. You can see this addition again where this was added on to the original house, and the reveal in this general area is wider than the original reveal. And so as we were looking at it, a lot of this wider reveal, lap siding, seemed to be in better shape than this.
What about up in the gable, that white area? What's
This
that?
up here was exactly where we were identifying. That's the same gable that we were saying is
Okay.
the
Replace
southern
those,
face
yeah.
that potentially has some issues.
But that reveal is the same as the siding on the front?
No, as this.
Oh, so that is too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at page, you could go to page 30 again. I'm sorry, we sort of are working around the house this way in these pictures, right? From front to east side to south side to west side. So when you see this, some of this is that wider reveal right there. And when we were looking at this, and we're fairly close to this, that siding generally seemed to be in fairly good condition. So that's one of the criteria that is considered. Just going through these a little more, each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time and place. Changes should not create a sense of false development. My response to that is yes, that's absolutely true. What this project, if all of the siding was allowed to be replaced and trim was allowed to be put back on the windows, if that was not done in the right way, that would create a false sense of development of the house. Most properties change over time. Those changes that have acquired historical significance in their own right shall be retained and preserved. It's interesting that southern addition, which is, a newer portion of the house, it still has very historic windows on it. So when you look at page 28, you can see these windows right here have
The same
big
kind of-
trim piece on the
yeah,
top. They have
right
a
on the
projecting
top.
sill on the bottom.
Right.
They're wooden windows. So, what's that?
So it's basically a period addition,
The addition looks,
Just
the-
like the
in
rest.
in the period of the
Exactly.
historic district.
Exactly.
Right.
Do we know when the addition was put on by chance?
I don't know.
It's gotta be somehow between, well, what's the age of the main house?
It's in the packet in 1910. Or is it-
1910.
That addition looks like it happened sometime pre-1930.
Did they have the whole pane windows back then?
What?
Pardon?
Those windows are double pane. I don't know the age either, so.
Oh, they're double pane? Oh,
Maybe
well,
the actual glass part has been replaced since then.
Yeah, I don't know.
The
It-
trim
We're
certainly
talking,
looks.
yeah, we were talking about.
It was
the
kind of an
trim, yeah.
anomaly to me because I was looking at it, I'm like, this is clearly newer, but this is a very nice historic window.
Yeah,
I bet you the windows aren't original to the addition.
It's quite possible.
yeah.
It's quite possible.
Well, okay.
So just continuing on, distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a historic property shall be preserved. Again, in altering the siding, it has a great potential to potentially impact many of the distinctive features, the character defining features, the craftsmanship that's associated with these homes. Given these facts, based on the proposal, I don't believe that it's possible to ensure that the distinctive features, finishes, or construction techniques, I don't believe it's possible to show that they will be preserved given the current proposal. If, again, staff is willing to support a limited change to potentially the west side and some of the south or all of the south portion of the building, but not as proposed the entire structure. And then deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old and design color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. Now, in this section, I noted specifically the issue with the lead paint, because that was one of the things that the applicant has requested this for, related to lead paint. And there is a very nice historic, I know I have it because I was just looking at it again. There is a very nice historic publication about lead paint
Removal.
in buildings, and basically it's called Appropriate Methods for Reducing Lead Paint Historic or Hazards in Historic Housing. It's a technical preservation service document produced by the National Park Service. And it basically says, a lot of historic homes have lead in them. And if you were to completely abate all lead from historic buildings, you would remove a whole bunch of historic features in historic buildings. And so what the document recommends is a 3-step approach: identify the historic features of the building that contribute to the character, undertake a risk assessment to determine what hazards that are there could potentially impact human health, and then evaluate options for hazards control in the context of historic preservation standards. There's a number of things in here that are good advice, but I mean, it says typically you can abate lead to reduce risk, or you can abate lead hazards to reduce the health risk to inhabitants of a building without impacting the historic character of the building. Based on that, again, I would recommend trying to minimize the scope of the potential change, especially to the siding. Then chemical or physical treatments, significant. You'll note that every other condition I sort of went through quick on pages 12 and 13. Based on all of this material, my recommendation was I put the Planning Commission. You can tell I'm not.
We knew who you were talking about.
Yeah, you knew who I was talking about. that you definitely approve the windows of the building and not approve of the change of the siding unless the siding change only occurs in a limited portion of the building. I did recommend a condition that, that the siding replacement be limited to the western wall. You might also suggest the southern wall as well, if you deem that appropriate. Both of those are non-street facing sides. But yeah, definitely the western wall of the building is the roughest wall at present. Are there any questions of me?
I do have a couple questions. I would love to see your article about the abatement.
Okay,
I think the EPA standards are that anytime a contractor comes in on a home and is hired to do siding or do paint, if it's built prior to 1978, I think it is, kind of going blank, but in 1978, that they're supposed to actually test for it, and then that's supposed to be abated. And so whether you're removing the siding or not, there's obviously, I mean, this is an older home, there's going to be lead-based paint, but you also have to take precaution for any paint chips that fall on the ground, and a lot of homeowners don't think about that. They just, that lead-based paint then goes into the soils, and so I don't know in the HPC code if there's anything that we do to make sure or to ensure that the paint's being disposed of properly, or do we just leave it up to the homeowner to make sure that that's taken care of properly?
there's the building, I would say the building official is the one who's responsible for that. Now, do we have contractors come in and just rip off lead-based paint and dispose of it improperly? Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, abatement, I think it can increase the cost quite a bit, and
Oh,
so,
I'm sure, yeah.
For
Yeah.
instance, when I repaired my front porch, it added 10% just for dealing with, because they have to
Cover
put plastic
things
sheeting, and then they have
All
to,
that
you know, it's tedious, and then they have to dispose of it properly.
Yeah.
And it added 10% of the cost. That's just kind of the thing with historic homes you got to deal with.
is she going to be required to have a licensed contractor do the work, or can they do the work themselves as part of the HPC?
Could not try to replace the siding ourselves.
What is the code for that, just for future reference?
We do, it would, so they
homeowner
would,
can always-
they could replace the siding themselves.
Okay,
A homeowner can always do it.
okay,
And, and a contractor could do it too. But I mean, a contractor could also
Do it incorrectly.
do it incorrectly. There's no doubt about it.
and then are we going to require certain colors or recommendations for colors? Because it's secondary?
The only thing that we talk about as far as paint is the finish, whether it should be painted or unfinished, but we don't go into color.
Yeah, we don't address color.
Is that because it's in the secondary, or,
We just don't.
I thought there was a
It's actually one of the
four-color-
things that's exempted out in our code, is
Okay.
paint colors.
and then the fiber cement, the hardy backer, the smooth shiplap, that's one of the choices that is already pre-approved, right? Or
We don't per se pre-approve any
we don't have a
siding.
list of approved?
We
Okay.
don't, no, I mean, we look at it on a
Case by
case-by-case
case.
basis. I would recommend, like, if you do allow the applicant to go to like a hardy plank on this side.
Well,
I was walking by a building yesterday and it had the same sort of lip in the shiplap, yeah, whereas it's got a divot in it, but then it had hardy plank on the side. And I was like, oh, look at that. That's exactly the situation that could be used on this building. And it was, whoever did it matched the reveals. So unless you were looking for it, you wouldn't notice it.
no, it was done. Oh, wow.
Are they required to show us the material before they put it on the building? Or is there anybody, like, do you go out on the site and,
I'll probably go out on the site to make sure that things are going properly. But I mean,
I'm just trying
Yeah.
to understand the process a
yeah,
little
I
bit deeper.
mean, ultimately, if if something doesn't have to be removed from a building, it's preferable because then we don't have to make sure that they're putting it back correctly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for your efforts to preserve a home in Independence.
We're right now with staff.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's good. So did anybody have any questions for staff? I have one question. Can we pull up figure 7, please, the west side? Figure 7.
Sorry.
What page is that?
There's not a page number on the packet.
Page 31.
Page 31? Oh. All right, so
Okay,
it's
so.
this one, right?
Yes, yes.
This one.
So on this picture, obvious right there where the patch is and the window repair at some point isn't right. What else is wrong with this wall?
You mean besides the paint chipping?
Well, yeah, I'm talking structurally.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at it from an angle, it looked skewed to me. So
What was skewed?
it just looked crooked to me,
Because of that repair.
potentially because of the repair.
Okay, so essentially, if you had someone come in and just rework the siding between the windows, that would disappear, correct?
Potentially it could,
Okay, that was my question for you.
Okay.
potentially it could.
John, did you have any questions for Fred?
Nope, I'm just following along. Got
Part of my concern about that patch, and I think I went out there with Troy, our building inspector. I think both of our concern was, I mean, the patch doesn't look right, and so it makes us worried that water
Behind
got in there.
Yeah,
Right, which is a whole
Well-
separate issue from what we're dealing with.
right.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to hear from the applicant, please. If you could step forward to the podium and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Beverly West, and I'm one of the homeowners. Apologize that Andrew wasn't able to join me. His parents are visiting from out of town today. So I have a few things I want to go through. There was a lot that Fred talked about here. Starting with the easy part, the windows. What Fred didn't mention, but I think we have in our application is obviously, the aluminum doesn't fit aesthetically, but it's an egress issue. That's the primary concern we have. So even if they looked historically accurate, we would want to replace them because they're not very big. It's hard to tell with scale, but they're not big enough and they're in our bedroom, and they're the only windows in the bedroom. So they're not big enough for us to get out. I mean, maybe I could squeeze out. But the code requires I can't remember what it is, but a certain opening so that a firefighter could come through. And they're simply not big enough the way they're structured. So that's why we'd like to go with a casement window. That's why we're not doing any kind of sliders in, so that if there was a fire, they could break the glass and actually get in. I hope that never is the case. But as I told Fred when he visited, if that is the case, I don't care if there's broken glass, please come in. So this is the home we live in. We're not landlords. It's our home. It's been our home. I attempted to paint it myself a while back. And I had some illness and had to stop, hence the two-tone look. And at that point, we weren't in a financial position to hire somebody else to do it. I have my health back now, but not the time, but we are to the point now that we can financially do it. And essentially, when we brought in painters to give us quotes, the cost kind of bowled us over. And we all know contractor costs have gone up recently. But because of one, the degraded state of the paint as it is, and, but especially the lead situation. It was gonna be very expensive. And the next time we had to paint it, it was gonna be expensive again because of the lead. And so we went and looked at quotes for siding replacement, and it will cost us more to do it this one time, but long-term, it will cost us much less. We live in the historic district because we like the historic district. We like our historic home. We left the original windows, we like them, and we put storm windows on the inside. And that's great. We don't want to replace those. I'd love to leave the siding. But if you look at Fred mentioned the caulk. I'm not talking about the caulk that you put on, where the siding boards butt together or along the windows or anything. In my application, it's hard to describe, so I made an illustration that didn't come out super well, but where shiplap overlaps,
Page 24.
somebody went along on all of those horizontals, so all those grooves that Fred talked about, and filled them with caulk. And not just like superficially, but like jammed up in there, caulk. And so all along the building, one, it can't breathe. I'm sure they thought they were doing a great thing to insulate the house, but now it can't breathe. So I paint over a section, and a year or two later, the paint is cracked and blistering, as if it had been 10 years. I tried to remove the caulk, and it's jammed in there so much. It's not a matter of just scraping it out like you would scrape normal caulk. And then the caulk starts to separate where it is sticking out and causes the paint underneath it to crack. And the west side is maybe the most obvious example in terms of, like, if you're standing back and you're looking and you're going, yeah, it is skewed, what the heck? And look at all that paint coming off. And then you look at the broader pictures and like, yeah, it looks okay. But if you look close up, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to send this to you all, but can you pass an iPad around? I can walk it up.
Thank you.
This is what it looks like close up. That's on the north side, the street facing side. That's one of them. And that's a section I painted a couple years ago.
And the caulking is what you're talking about
It's up
in,
I don't know.
well, where it comes,
It must
okay.
have taken about 10,000 tubes of caulk. I can't even imagine how long that took them or how much caulk it took them. And then, so it's up, let's see if I have a picture of it. It's up underneath. Some of these I was able to remove it from. You can see it. You can see it there. That's caulk jammed up in there and cracking.
Is there any dry rot in any of the siding, or is it really just the issue of the paint?
We found some. It mostly seems to be trim areas at this point, but I feel like an idiot. I didn't test it for lead when I was first painting it. I hope my illness was not related, but we haven't scraped it all. I suspect there is. Looking at some of the bubbling, I can't imagine that water wouldn't be sitting in there, and Oregon is not exactly dry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's what the caulk situation is about. In terms of the removal of trim pieces and knee walls and architectural features, again, we want to keep those. We don't want our house to look like a sterile box. And when we spoke to contractors, we went with the contractor that talked about how he would replace those and how he would pull them off and store them. And yeah, I don't doubt that in taking some of that trim off, it'll break, and probably because it's rotted, the parts. And if it is, I want it to come off, but we will replace it. I have no problem making that a requirement. We do it anyways. Let's see. In terms of the style of, it has this shiplap with kind of a little, not a square shiplap, but one with a little bit of a curve. If there's a hardy plank or similar in that style, we'll be happy to use that style. With that said, if you step back to the sidewalk, you're really not seeing that much of a difference. We're not attempting to make this house look modern or new. And when we talked to the contractor, maybe the contractor was making this up, and we can double check that, but we can put in a contingency that the trim has to go on top of the siding. I do know that it is typical nowadays to butt it up, so you do have that flatter profile, but Fred's right, that would look weird. That would look different. And we want it to go all the way. And, sorry, let me make sure I'm not missing anything.
Take your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I do. Just a really quick question. So the northeast side of the building, because I heard you say that you're making the windows bigger for obvious reasons. So the northwest.
North and south,
North.
on the
Okay.
upper story.
Oh, I'm just at the bottom of the photo, it says northeast. So yes, the north side, I see. Is that space, is there only going to be a bigger window on the other side, or is it going to be also a bigger window on the north side? Because that faces the street, correct?
Correct. The window itself won't be larger. It actually probably can't be.
Because of the size of the space, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's all I had.
Yeah.
But it will be in the gable, and I'm sorry that I didn't provide that picture. Can you pull up Google Maps? Because I think this.
Well, you can kind of see it.
I was just thinking if you are using a bigger window and it's on the street-facing side, it would be more important to have more of a historical window, but that space is so small, right? I just don't think that you would,
It's like 2x3, right?
but we
Yeah, I
would,
think it's 2x3. On that side, it's like rotated,
so the egress is really going to be provided on the other side.
the egress will be on both sides.
Oh, okay.
It's just that the opening itself is fine. It's that they put horizontal sliders in, so now it's
Gotcha.
cut it in half
Oh,
in
okay.
terms of what's actually,
Gotcha.
I just think of a big fireman.
Oh, yeah,
You
that's
can
a
see
better
that-
picture.
You can see that, that horizontal slider in the gable there,
Yeah.
right there at the
Right.
top.
There are trees now, so you can't, Google Maps the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, right.
I had some questions. Can we go back to figure 7 again, please?
Oh, the west side of the building?
Yeah.
31?
31.
Okay, so you've talked to some contractors about replacing the siding. Have you talked to anybody about fixing, basically putting correct siding in between the windows from the bottom of the window to the top of the window?
You mean that,
That-
where there used to be a window?
Yeah.
And
Well, I
that
mean,
patch,
basically, see where he's drawing, Fred's doing it. He knows what I'm getting at here.
No, it's Karen's.
I was going
drawing.
to say, that's
Oh,
actually,
Karen was doing it, sorry. So that area that she's outlining, did you inquire about somebody coming in and
The whole thing.
just not necessarily changing the siding, just repairing and replacing what needed to be replaced so it looked right?
in that, just that section.
Yes, I think if you did that, I think it would be a cost savings for you. We had another house, 555 Monmouth, with very similar siding, and they did a very good job of fixing some unauthorized alterations and some previous alterations that were made long beforehand. And I think if you looked into that, maybe even talked to that homeowner, they could give you some insight. You would not only save a lot of money, you're going to have to take that off anyhow.
I'm going to have to
because
take off what?
where that window was fixed, because,
Okay, so that white patch
Right.
That is not actually, so that white patch is just, there was an old exhaust vent,
Right.
much smaller than that patch actually is. And when we redid our bathroom, we had to take that out because it was dying and they don't make them anymore. So I put the patch over it because we were going, at that point, we'd start
Right. I'm not
planning to
really-
do the siding. And I wasn't, until we knew what was going to happen. Where those lines are, where there was we're assuming there was a window at some point, I have not to just repair that, no. I've actually, I appreciate their concern about water, but we pulled all the tile, we had to replace tile in the bathroom. There's no water damage.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about the water, but back to I think the skewed nature of when you look at that is simply due to that.
Yeah, it's,
Extent or
I
And
agree.
addition or whatever you call it.
if you
Take the
worked on
whole
that
thing
area
out.
that we were showing you,
well, yes, certainly that would fix the skewed look of it.
that would, instead of
This-
replacing all the siding on those.
The skewed look is the least of my
I
concerns, to be
think it's
honest.
the caulking and the lead-based paint on the entire
Well-
thing,
And the
right?
cost of, and we cannot remove the lead paint because the code doesn't allow the complete removal methods, at least as far as I can read. And if we did those, honestly, it would probably damage the siding and it would cost us just as much and we'd be left with something that wouldn't last very long. Wood siding does have a lifespan. It's not permanent. Eventually, we will have to replace this siding. I would rather do it now and not spend 20 grand every 5 years. If we have to do that, we have to move. That's the end of the story. We are not, I appreciate people who can restore homes to, I mean, I'm friends with Ted Baker. I appreciate when people can restore things to, and keep as much of the original as possible. I'm one of those people who keeps wood and reuses it. But I don't live in a museum. I can't afford to live in a museum. I have to live in a place that I am not having to worry about water damage, that I'm not having to worry about harming myself if I try to do this myself, which I simply don't have the time to do. And that we're going to mortgage our house to the point that we'll lose it trying to just paint it. Just paint it. We have to re-roof it at some point. And the code, and I appreciate, I mean, this document about lead-based paint, it talks more about preserving things. It doesn't say how to do it. And it's from the National Park Service. We don't live in a park. I love downtown Independence. I want to stay there. But the code says that things have to be economically feasible, and there's a limit to, and it's obviously your limit to decide, but the alternative is we do nothing, and then it degrades, and then in 10 years, I'm back in front of you with a house with tons of damage. And then Fred says, well, it's completely destroyed. We have to replace it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do that. I would sell the house and move instead. Partially because I live next to a house that looks like that nobody's lived in for years and has a giant metal shed behind us that's falling apart. I don't want our house to be that. In terms of precedence on this, just a few months ago in June, you all did approve a hardy plank replacement for siding. I'm sure the details of that are different. It apparently was somebody who lived out of state, came back and was like, oh, the siding is deteriorated, and it was approved. And I do appreciate that the historic guidelines call for repair, but when we look at that and we go, okay, we're trying to be proactive about this, and we're being told we have to pay more money and pay more money to retain that original wood but the person who didn't do anything and was out of town can come back. Now it's broken, and they can do this thing that's going to save them money long-term. And that's a little frustrating, honestly, when I read this report of that by trying to do trying to maintain our home in time, we're being told we have to maintain a profile. If you look at the rest of our neighborhood, it's lap siding. It is not going to look out of place for our house to have lap siding versus shiplap. Most people don't know the difference. We have no pictures of this house from 1910. We don't even know what siding was on this house in 1910. That's the way these houses are. They're lovely little conglomerations of stuff throughout the years. And this is the next conglomeration this house needs to have so it can be around in another 100 years. So,
I think, may I speak?
Do you have a question for the applicant?
Not directly. But it's in
Maybe
reference
it's a
to
discussion
her comment about the house that they were able to replace the
Yeah,
siding.
that kind of bothered me too.
Well, that,
You want me to address it?
Well, I would love for you to join, if I can just get the thought of
Go
my,
ahead.
okay, thank you very much for your sentiment. But the hardy plank, I think it was on Fifth Street, it was Mr. Goodrich, he replaced with the hardy backer smooth shiplap, right? But you're saying just a lap siding. Is there a difference between shiplap and lap? Is there two different kinds of lap that I'm not?
if they make shiplap, we'll use,
Okay.
if they make something that
Yeah, he
matches, or
used a
somebody else
shiplap,
makes
a
something
hardy
that matches
plank.
better.
He used a smooth hardy plank shiplap.
Well, since everybody keeps talking about the other application, that was a completely different situation.
right, yeah.
That siding was not original. It wasn't even close to being the original siding. The shiplap siding on this home,
Is,
that's original.
And how do we know that?
well,
Well,
because you
from
can-
years of experience at looking at old homes. I mean, they would not have changed that. We have other homes like that in town. Matter of fact, not too far from you, the 555 Monmouth, I think that's from 1880. But they did the shiplap extensively. I even have some on my home. I live 2 or 3 houses away from you. I have a historic home as well, and I sympathize because I'm looking at painting estimates too, and it hurts hearing them. It really does.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. It hurts hearing what?
Hearing the estimates
Oh,
for
yeah.
painting, yeah.
It hurts
I'm going through the
everything
exact same thing right now, so I sympathize completely. But just because you've got lead siding,
That is not our primary reason for doing this.
yeah. But what was the original question you had? I'm sorry, I got way off track there.
Well, I was referencing the property that I believe she was talking about, where he was able to replace it with a shiplap. He did use a shiplap.
It was as the chair was mentioning, that it was a different circumstance. With that application, I can't remember, I can't remember, it was a lap siding, but you could tell it had been replaced, and it was like a pine. He brought that stuff in.
And he had aluminum corners.
He had
which-
aluminum corners that had the barcode on the back of them. So you could tell that the work had been done
recently.
more recently than,
So it's hard to compare the two, basically, is the
They're
takeaway.
completely
But
different.
yeah.
I would like to say that it makes sense for the property owners to replace the entire thing. To me.
We have had instances like this. I will point to Tyler Kolb's project. I want to say it was 230 South Fourth. If I'm correct, it's the one that's a blue house. He had the exact same shiplap siding on a bunch of the house, he took off the siding on the back and reused it on the front of the house. We gave him a historic preservation award that first year for the work that he did to that house. I mean,
That was the first thing I thought about this house, but the reveal is different.
Right, yeah, it is. Yeah, it seems like it.
I would note that under that wider reveal is older siding. So again, I don't know how old that addition is, but somebody had tied a deck into the house and cut away some of the newer siding, and there was older that was kind of completely destroyed. And that stuff on the south side is newer because the south side gets beat up. It's going to be pretty beat up pretty quick here.
It doesn't take away the caulking issue that she has either, right? That all of the caulking that's underneath all the boards, and anytime she tries to remove it, it's destroying the boards. So I think it's more than the lead-based paint, it's also that issue.
It's all of the things combined. I don't want to replace the siding. Are you kidding me? That's expensive. If I could just paint it, I would love to do that. The document from the Parks Service talks about just dealing with the lead in the more damaged areas and just not dealing with the other. That's not going to happen. A painter is not going to come and be like, yeah, I'll just paint over this cracked paint and give you my warranty. Nobody's going to do it. They're going to have to sand it. They're going to have to sand the whole darn thing. And because it's wood and because it has caulk jammed up in there, it's going to happen again. It's going to start cracking again, and we won't be able to just paint over it. And this is the only reason that we're at this point. If somebody has this as their hobby and wants to lovingly restore that wood, I will be happy to let them do that. I'd love to keep it.
I don't have any further questions.
John, did you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't.
So let's go back to the actual application. You're asking to replace siding on the west and south facing
The whole thing,
the whole house? Or just the south and west facing?
the whole house. Those pictures I showed you, the caulk is in the west. It's not limited to those sides.
Well, let me ask you a further question. If the commission is not disposed to granting an application to replacing the entire house siding, would you want a reduced application, like one or two sides?
I'm not, maybe. I honestly, that was something Fred just suggested recently, and I'm not even really sure.
I think he's suggesting it because the code is pointing toward one decision, and he's trying to find a ground where you can get some of what you're asking for. Am I right, Fred?
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And the code is pointing, we haven't discussed it yet, but it's pointing in the direction of if we're having to decide whole house or no other option, it's pointing to not.
I mean,
And
would you replace half the siding on your house?
I actually, like I said, I have a historic home about 2 or 3 houses from you, and it has 3 different sidings on it. Most people don't know it because you don't see them all at the same time. That kind of thing happens over the course of a home that evolves.
Honestly, I mean, maybe, but we'd still have the cost with the other side. I think at that point, we would probably prepare the house for sale.
Okay, so you're saying you want to leave the application as it stands and not consider any modifications to it?
At this point, no, I don't see a reason.
Okay. We don't have any other people in the audience. I don't think we have any written testimony sent in, do we? So, let's see here. If there are no objections, the hearing and record is closed.
I do have one question I want to clarify.
Okay, so there's an objection. Go ahead, tell me.
Not an objection.
Well, that stops us from closing it by saying yes.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead and add, if you want to add something.
There's no color restrictions, though, when we paint it, right?
No,
And that's in the code?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, if no,
Nothing in the code about color.
if no objections, the hearing and record is closed. Okay. So now we discuss it. Does anybody have any comments for discussion? Well, I think the staff report was spot on.
Yeah.
I think the windows are a no-brainer. I think that as the application stands, it doesn't support replacing all the siding on the house.
Right.
I sympathize with the owner. I've had the same issues with my home too. I'm sure others do too. And it's tough. But that would simply destroy the historic resource. I think it would go from contributing to non-contributing at that point, wouldn't it, Fred?
I'll say it depends on how the windows are redone, how the trim around the windows would be redone, but I would say probably.
Yeah, there's just no evidence of extensive rot, is what I'm saying, right?
We didn't,
Oh, I shouldn't even be asking you that. I'm sorry, we should just be discussing among it. That was my
It
bad.
does- Well, when you look at the pictures, which is all we can.
It's just
go
peeling,
by,
and
Yeah,
from the
it's-
testimony, there's not really any
doesn't
substantial
seem-
rot.
It doesn't look like things are rotting around.
I mean, I think they were forgetting of what she said about the caulking. Literally, if she paints this home and takes the time and money to do this, and she paints over it, it's gonna start peeling again. And it's something that she's gonna continually have to do over and over and over because of somebody caulking underneath all of the shiplap improperly. And so, we don't take that into account?
Well, but then when you look at the west side of the building, did you read Fred's condition?
Well, I can look at it again.
Condition 1.
What page are we on?
7, the applicant shall limit siding replacement to the western wall on the original portion of the building. So if you look at the west side, which is all, we've had all this, with the proposal that's in front of us, that's this side.
But she's saying she's
No.
replacing all of the siding.
She wants to replace all the siding.
Well, I know.
I think
but, I mean,
that's
we
Fred's
can-
proposal.
We can make a
She
counter
doesn't want,
proposal
she
and
doesn't
say,
want, she just stated she didn't want that.
you don't want to even consider that?
She doesn't want to
That's,
revise the
that's already been,
application.
yeah, she doesn't want to revise it.
Okay, all right.
So we're looking at the application as it stands. Does anybody have any,
So, I'll take your lead.
well, did you have any more points? I mean, I made my points. I think the siding's a no-go and the windows are a no-brainer approve.
On the windows?
Yeah.
Yes, I approve the windows.
Well, we have to
I
approve
second.
the whole.
John, did you have any things to add to our discussion?
Well, I think if we do it as two different parts, so obviously we're going to approve the windows. And then for part 2 with the siding, if we go ahead and say that we would approve it with that condition, but if it has to be the siding for the whole house, therefore it's disapproved. That's how I think we ought to put the condition in there anyway.
Well,
Well,
Put the if.
she doesn't want to modify the application.
application,
She wants it all or nothing.
right.
I know, but we can still say why.
Okay, well, we could
Still
do
say
that.
why
I
we
guess
were.
we
We
could say
can
that.
say that. We can say whatever, you know. I mean, she can decide whether she
Yeah,
wants to
so,
go along
okay.
with it
We
or
just
not.
go with what she said she wanted now, which
No,
was
we
not
don't
to.
necessarily-
We have to take the application in front of us.
Yes,
We can't
right.
modify her application
Right, we can't.
without her consent, so,
Okay, well, then we'll take the application as it is, since she said she didn't want to change it, and
Yeah.
then we'll decide.
Right.
so,
What John is saying, I don't think we can do, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
I don't think any of us are in disagreement, are we?
No, I don't think so.
So at this point, I'd entertain a motion. Oh. Okay, so start with that, and then
Start with what?
right here, and just say the windows, but not the,
Okay. I move to approve the certificate of appropriateness application, file number CA-2023-05, with the windows being approved.
and the siding request being disapproved.
Well, and then with the windows being approved and the siding
Disapproved.
disapproved, and adopted the findings, conditions, and staff recommendations as provided in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Aye. Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye. John says aye.
We heard you, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, going on to the next thing then. So at your last meeting, you talked about what is an addition. Your folks remember that discussion?
Yes, oh, sure.
Very clearly.
Come on.
And it seems your opinion has changed in the meantime.
Yeah, well, I definitely looked at how an addition is defined.
Yeah,
And so I included that definition, I think I did.
is that the applicability, so long as the alteration does not include an addition to the structure? Was that the one?
Right,
I
yep,
guess first-
you'll see that in the Oregon Structural Specialty Code, it's defined as an extension or an increase in floor area, number of stories, or height of a building or structure.
Floor area.
Floor area.
Can you just define that?
Floor area, I would say, is enclosed. I will look into the definition of floor area because I knew you would ask me that. I actually knew that you were gonna do that.
Weren't we talking
I
about
can't
a
believe that I
roof?
didn't.
I can't either. You know me by now
I
because.
know, and I'm like, he's gonna ask me about floor area, look into floor area. But I'm pretty certain that floor
Because we
area
talked
means
about,
enclosed.
that's why we thought a porch, because it's semi-enclosed, a covered porch.
Right,
Because it has a roof.
Yeah, so floor area,
is enclosed. I'm
Well,
pretty certain it's enclosed.
that, I bet you're probably right.
Yeah.
But to be really,
Yeah.
to really nail down this definition, you really need the definition of floor area. Because I think, like, if you look at a county assessment,
Yeah,
I've looked at the assessment for my home. It shows the floor area, the heated floor area.
Yeah.
It shows the floor area of the garage. It also shows the floor area of the patio and the porch.
It does?
On my county assessment, they have a,
it also shows driveways and like paved driveways and stuff.
yeah, I
so
know.
it didn't choose-
So it's a floor area, is it floor area of an enclosed, a semi-enclosed area, or is it only fully enclosed?
I'm pretty certain it's only fully enclosed, but I will confirm that.
Right.
I really can't believe that, you knew I was gonna ask
Oh,
that.
yeah, no, that's funny because I wrote this up. I'm like, oh, I better look into floor area because I know Curtis will ask me.
So why didn't you?
Well, I did.
Time, right?
Other stuff going on.
Life was happening.
The budget, yeah, right.
And
But I
that's all I
did-
want to do is nail down the definitions so that there's no question going forward when you make a decision based on
Whether it's a
your
non-
duties as the historic preservation officer versus going to a type 2 hearing.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I did think when I was looking at it, that did sort of, just looking at the code, so any modification or alteration of a historic resource at all has to come to you guys. But also, if it's a modification or an alteration to a historic element of a non-contributing resource, then it would come to you folks too. So the modification itself, so like, I was like, man, like what happens if you put a porch
That's-
on a historic building? Or even a
A
non-historic,
non-contributing historic resource.
yeah.
Yeah, does that really alter it or does it not alter it?
I would say that it would modify the historic portion of the resource. If there's something where it's like, hey, I can't even think of a situation.
That one place is a good example, the one that we brought up. So would that porch be a type 2 hearing in the future?
No, it would still be exactly the same.
Even though it was attached to the historic portions?
It didn't modify it because the whole front of that building has been previously modified.
Okay.
The previous porch has been enclosed. All the windows are out of it. They're all horizontal sliders. They're aluminum, just.
Fair enough, but a porch might be,
A porch might impact a historic.
it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
Okay, good discussion on that.
And definitely if a porch is proposed on the front of it, like,
The front
or
of the
even,
building.
or even on the back of a historic resource, it's gonna come back, it's gonna come to you folks because it's a modification then of a historic resource. Right?
Anything else on that topic? Did you have anything else you want to discuss?
I don't think so.
I got a couple things I want to discuss.
And Mr. Finmore, there are documents at your station that were provided by Commissioner Boisvert. At the last meeting, there was discussion on how to notify
Oh.
property owners.
Right.
Thank you.
So there-
Okay, we'll get to that too. There's 3 things we need to talk about. First, I want to call everybody's attention to this little postcard. Does anybody remember getting it?
I did.
I'd like to applaud our city planner.
That was
Thank you.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I look at it
It's,
again? Can I
I
look at
will
it
say
again?
it's completely our communications team, that put those out, that made those, and, yeah, no. We-
It's a postcard
It's
kind
in
of telling people with historic homes, if you're thinking about doing this, you
Because
need to be talking to us.
didn't we talk about the fact that in the grant that you got, you hired 2 people?
Yep.
And it was a contractor and an architect?
Yep.
Right.
And they have now counsel with them, right? So it's in
Yep.
regards to that.
Yep, and so a few people have taken us up on it, and more people have requested, so,
I love that. And how do we, just keep this information going, though? Postcard's great, and it looks like it went out really quick, and it reached a lot of people, but how do we make sure, is it gonna be on the website
it
as
is on our
well?
website.
And it also went out on those emails.
I liked that it
too.
was a postcard too, and
Yeah.
a fairly nice postcard instead of a letter, because you get junk mail that's in a letter, a lot of times
And you don't pay attention.
it goes straight in the
Yeah.
trash. This was,
Yeah, you know
and the
what, I
big
feel
word remodel, that was,
I feel like we should do that more often. We just sent out a thing for the Central Talmadge project, and it went out as a letter in an envelope, and I'm like,
those go right in the trash half the
this
time.
is not gonna be as successful.
Okay, so
job.
the next thing I want to bring up is Commissioner Boisvert brought in a disclosure that I assume is at every closing for a historic home?
Yeah, you know what it made me realize? So there's 3 forms here, and you'll notice that one of them says, 2 of them, excuse me, say OREF. One of the forms is 2 pages. So actually, there's 4 pages total, but 2 of them say OREF in the left-hand corner, and then one of them that is the 2-page document says Oregon Realtors. So we're switching over forms recently. There's 2 sets of forms. It's kind of a mess, but that's why there's now 3 forms instead of 2. And there's actually more than, there has been in a long time. Like, it wasn't that long ago that there wasn't a form at all. But looking at this, I'm realizing that just because this is there doesn't mean that realtors know to use it. And like, when is it that you?
Will the title company
There's
do-
listing agents all day long that don't know anything about historic homes and will list a property and not even care if it's on the historical district or contributing or anything. And so I need to think about that a little bit, about how to make sure agents know when to use it.
Does
And why?
this, does the title company do this, or is it the
No.
agent's responsibility?
It's the agent's
And
responsibility.
I can tell you, it doesn't happen.
No, and,
A lot of times.
when you look at your closing, if you're the buyer and you look at the closing documents, how thick is that?
Yeah.
I mean, are you gonna look at a 4-page?
This, and luckily, this is before that phase.
Yeah,
This would be
but-
part of the purchase
Well-
agreement, so that's good. So there's less documents for them to pay attention to, but I'll do a little digging just to figure out if you even care, I can update you on it. But when does this come into play? Because I list historic homes and I just know to use them, I know to look for them, but there's many agents that probably don't. So maybe there's some gaps I could fill in that regard, to get the information out there to people about the importance of using them, but at least they're here now. There
But
wasn't.
realtors aren't, not all realtors are paying attention to this.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
And that segues into the next topic. I know that that not all realtors pay attention to this, because I'm purchasing a historic home, and I didn't see anything like this in the disclosures.
You know what, I will back up a little bit, and I should have printed off the actual purchase agreement, because they just updated the form, and I think that there may be a portion in there that references that if the home.
There wasn't in the disclosures I signed, but
So anyways, purchase agreement might actually reference it, and that would be a good way to do it, is they would reference it in the purchase agreement when they're writing an offer, that this home was built this time, and so there's this addendum that needs to apply. Right? So that would be a good way to do it. So I'll work a little bit on that. But that's what the forms say. Now you get to read them.
I read them already.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
segueing into that topic of me, I will be moving sometime soon.
Where are you moving, Curtis?
Oregon City, and of course, that will affect you guys. The timeline is a slow-moving move. I expect to probably have to resign from the commission sometime between April and June of next year. Hopefully, I've spoken to the mayor about it. He said he's reaching out. He's trying to fill the one open seat we have.
There's one open seat right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that will be two. And I know John, you still with us, John?
That's right. John is well overdue for mine here.
Yeah.
So
I think John
recruit
is.
people.
Yeah, so if you know someone that you think would be a good fit, tell them to put in their form to the city recorder. But I just want to make everyone aware, because it's coming down the pike. I will miss Independence greatly, but there are pros and cons to every move, and I think the pros outweigh the cons on this one.
I will say I like Oregon City.
It's nice. I'm getting a historic home there too, so.
Oh, good. Well, a lot of experience.
Okay.
The last meeting we had, I did bring up the Carnes Weaver Award, and saying I really still am willing to work with the museum and do a scrapbook on the awards,
I
and,
think that'd be
you know.
wonderful.
Yeah, I forgot all about that.
Okay, I mentioned, this is the third time now that I've mentioned wanting to do this. And there wasn't, I checked the website and there wasn't anything about it on the website, so, that I saw. But I'm not talking about the website, I'm talking about like a scrapbook. And what I'm thinking of is it opens flat and you've got one side of the page, which ideally would have a photo, and maybe not, of the home originally, and maybe some verbiage about the history of who owned it and everything like that. And then on the other side, maybe the person that owns it now and did all the work getting the award, and if they had anything to say about it. And maybe on the front of the cover, it should be like, do we have a logo for Conn's River Award? Like maybe a logo of that. And so, anyway, when you open up the scrapbook, you've got the past and the present of that particular property that we've given the award to.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
I had a question about logos. Is there a logo for the HPC?
No.
There's none.
Okay.
None of our commissions have logos. The planning department doesn't have a logo either, though, like,
That's all right.
Public Works has, you know, it's basically the city logo and it says Public Works on it.
Well, I was just
There
thinking,
is no planning logo.
we have that, don't we give them a plaque?
We can move
Yeah.
that. It's awesome.
Well,
It's
could
a
we-
beautiful award. I will say that we got an award on Friday, and we got the award, and I'm like, this is all very nice, but I'd rather have what we give to our historic.
What was the award for?
For the trolley.
Oh,
I think that's,
Can-
I see that thing packed more often than not. I mean,
Where did that-
occasionally it's not, but
Yeah.
Where did the award come from? I missed the announcement.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been announced all
Oh.
that much. It was League of Oregon Cities.
oh,
So it was, I mean, it's a nice award.
recommended.
Yeah. I hope they announce it. I mean, that's
They will, I'm
a
sure they
pat on
will.
the, pat on the back.
But it was like, I saw it, I'm like, you know, like.
gotta go do
what-
one of your
part
videos.
the thing with what we did with our award was, it was like, let's make it beautiful so people feel really good about making something beautiful to get it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I even looked at I looked at the last awards that we gave out, because,
Oh, last year.
last year, and I'm like, those are so beautiful. Like, what a beautiful award that we give out.
Well, I would love to see your efforts at the museum.
Huh?
I would love to see your efforts at the museum.
Me too.
So just do it.
Well, what am I supposed to do? Just call the museum and say,
just walk in and talk to the museum director.
well, Fred, you have to set this stuff up because I
No,
don't
you
have
can go
any money
Talk to
to
the
do.
museum director. What I think is it should be on the website too. And so I think it'd be great for you to work with Ashley, and that's what I'm.
Well, okay, but I mean, I'm going to need some, cred when I walk in the door. In other words, the city is going to take care of the money somebody has to buy the books, somebody has to dig the pictures out, I'm not volunteering for that part.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
Okay,
Sounds good.
She's a big picture idea person on this project.
right,
Sounds good.
okay.
Is there anything else? We're adjourned.
Okay.
Okay, I'm signing off.
Bye, John.
Bye, John.
Bye,
I
John.
think I'll turn
Bye, see you next time.
that off.
Curtis, dang you, man.
I'm gonna miss Independence.